I want to start by asking you, Jeremy, how you came to make this film about Jim.
Well, I've been friends with Jim. I've been lucky enough to be friends with Jim for a number of years now. I met him about 11 years ago, the first time he came out for the Tamworth Country Music Festival, and we became friends then. And about 2.5 years ago now, I was over in Liverpool with Jim, watching him play a gig with Elvis Costello at the Liverpool Philharmonic Hall, and the next day we were out going through the Beatles Museum together and talking about their story, and then we got to talking about Jim's early career. And I started to get a real sense of his whole life story and career story, and it just really struck me that this is a really interesting story about someone who seemed like they were destined for mega stardom, to become a huge mainstream country star. But for whatever reason, even though your songs had become huge hits, your career had sort of taken this other path, and I wanted to examine...
Hey, wait a minute. I'm sorry.
And I wanted to examine why that was. And it was also, it seemed like there was this other underlying story about the way the music industry had changed in the last 20 years and the rise of the Americana genre. So it was sort of a combination of those two things.
Okay, great. So, Jim,
Yes.
you meet this young guy at a gig and go to the Beatles Museum together, become friends, go to the Beatles Museum, and then he's asking you if he can follow you around with a camera for what seems like a couple of years to make a film. How did you feel about that process? And as an artist, what is that like?
Well, at first it was a little bit daunting and uncomfortable, but then I got so used to it that by the time Jeremy and Chris left, I was like thinking, hey, wait a minute, nobody's here to film me. And then like, gosh, I wish Jeremy and Chris were here at this, gig or this, thing or whatever. So it was all a good experience.
I know that.
And I'm so proud of him. And I know you guys. When Rob Potts first got me here at Tamworth, and what year was it?
2002.
2002, and Jeremy was 11. And I just, took such an immediate liking to him. I just thought he was just, about one of the smartest, not just kids, but people I'd ever met. And then I came back in 2007, right? That was the next time. And he had grown, more, and was still so bright and smart and just such a great person. And so when he came over to England to see Elvis Costello, he had planned this vacation. And I think the thing that kind of, one of the things that kind of won me over before that was we were playing at Hyde Park, this big gig with Elvis, and in front of Paul McCartney. He was playing later, and so it was like this huge thing. And there was this, I think there were 80,000 people out there. And so we go out on stage, and I look out, and I'm in the second row, and there's Jeremy. And he had waited all day. Well, I think he got there like 7 in the morning. And so then I stayed till the end of the night and let the rest of the guys go back. So I wanted to see Paul McCartney. So I had to walk back, and they had the park cordoned off so you couldn't drive at a certain time so that you could let all the people out. So I walked, and it took about a half an hour to get back to the hotel. And so I got to the street where the hotel was, and I see this person kind of crawling over the fence and jumping down, and it was Jeremy. And so we went back to the hotel, and I got him something to eat, and he had not, and he just impressed, it's just one of these things like, wow, he loves music so much, and when it's like he's always rattling off like, song lyrics or, this group or that group. He's got this, encyclopedic memory and everything. And so Anyway, I'm sorry, I think
Shucks.
so yeah, I'm sorry, you're getting ready to ask something.
It's obviously something that you two both share, though, that encyclopedic love and passion for music. The film, when it talks about you growing up and that interesting television choice where you're trying to watch Disney and then you wind up watching the Beatles, I'm interested to know how you went from being a Beatles fan to then getting into that early bluegrass and country and those songs.
Well, you know, I think it's kind of like a thing, like there's certain times where when you hear something for the first time, you can remember it. You know, it's like these big events. Like I remember when I was a kid when President Kennedy was assassinated. And, you know, there's these different things, Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy and things in life. It's like all this, you know, you remember exactly. And I remember hearing the Beatles for the first time. I remember hearing Ralph Stanley and Bill Monroe for the first time, and Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and Robert Johnson and all this kind of stuff, George Jones. And so I think there's a certain, you know, sometimes it's with songs too, certain songs, and you find people, like there was this friend of mine in the States who passed away a few years ago named Chris Gaffney, who was really a great singer and songwriter, and he sometimes would do these songs in his set, and they'd be kind of obscure, and I'd say, wait a minute, that Charlie Lubin song is one of my favorite songs in the world. I've never heard anybody else do it. And I think there's this, and it's kind of like with Graham Parsons, you know, it's like when you're anywhere in the world and you're talking about music and somebody says, oh, I love Graham Parsons, it's kind of like you have this connection with that person, you know what I mean? And so it's like that, you know, I think with Jeremy.
Jeremy, if I could ask you then.
So when I was that Hyde Park gig, I was in the audience and they were setting up for the Elvis set, and Jim came out and was just checking the line on his guitar, and there was this young English guy about, I don't know, 8 people to my right, and he looked up and went, "Oh my God, is that Jim Lauderdale?" So you're right, it's like that connection with strangers through the shared love of music. Sorry, you were saying?
Jeremy, I was going to ask you then, given all the interesting, eclectic artists that you're passionate about, why make a film about Jim? What was it about Jim that appeals to you, that makes you so interested and enthusiastic?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things is just the eclecticism of Jim's music. And if I like making a film about Jim, it's not just a film about country music, it's a film about bluegrass music, it's a film about rhythm and blues music, it's a film about pop music. Like that segment about Jim discovering the Beatles, like that experience and the way Jim expresses it, it's such a universal experience to everybody. And like that's what it felt like when I discovered the Beatles, and there was someone came up to us after the Nashville premiere and said, "I had the same thing with the same song," and like it was the guitar feedback. But it was also a personality thing. Like if you're going to make a film about someone, you're going to devote 90 minutes of screen time to them. They have to have enough character about them to warrant that, and Jim certainly has that. There's just the charisma and also the way you interact with people, the way you interact on camera. And it was also the love of Jim from other people, from other artists and other musicians. So I felt confident that making this film about Jim, the doors would fly open to me. But they did. As soon as people found out that I was in town making a film about Jim Lauderdale, I was, oh my God, we love Jim. What can we do to help? No matter who I asked, like I didn't get a single no for any of my interviews. Buddy, Elvis, Jerry Douglas, Sammy Sweet, like Gary Allen, it was all like, yeah, for Jim, of course.
That's so fantastic. I love the film, and I love all the different artists, people that you speak with, and all of those songwriters, and all of those incredible musicians, and all of that. But I have to say, and I know we have some Western wear enthusiasts in the audience, we didn't talk to Jim in the film about his stage wardrobe, but we see a lot of it. And
I feel it's so loud it speaks for itself.
but I want to ask Jim about it, because I think it's more than that. It's more than something that you're wearing on stage. It's a signifier about the kind of music that you love. I mean, I see those kind of outfits and I think about the clothes that people wore on the Grand Ole Opry back in what I would refer to as the good old days. So when did you start with the more bedazzled things, and why? And was it a conscious decision?
Well, Jim started wearing that kind of stuff around, I think it was about out in LA when I moved out there. I went out to see this guy, Manuel, who had worked for Nudie. You know, you hear about Nudie suits. But I really love harmony singing, like with her and Elvis Costello especially. So it's kind of a nice thing to get out of your own thing and sing with somebody else, because it does become very, I'm not sure what the word is, Jeremy, but you know, when you're aspiring, and I'm still, you know, the music business is still a struggle for me, and in some ways I feel like I'm like some of the artists here who I really admire and appreciate their music so much. You know, when you're trying to get something to happen, and it's just kind of this uphill climb, and there's exciting things that go on, and there's disappointing things, but you have to get out of your own head sometimes, because and so that's why like Tai Chi helps, and just go to China sometimes and study or something, just to totally get away from being Jim.
Back to Jeremy then, so you can get away from being Jim for a moment.
Wait, I'm not finished.
Jim's talked about music being an uphill struggle at times. What about filmmaking then? I mean, you're a young filmmaker. There's obviously not really a great budget for young independent people to go out and do projects, especially about left-of-center Americana music artists. How did you go about making this film, the actual craft? I know you did a bit of crowdfunding to get the cash, but how did it all come together, and how uphill was it, and is it still uphill?
I mean, I don't want to make it sound like a, I mean, my road has been a lot easier so far than Jim's was.
How old are you, Jeremy?
I'm 22.
Good.
I mean, the process of this started about a little over 2 years ago now, December 2010, when I really had a sort of a concept for the structure of the film, and I pulled all these clips off YouTube and cut together like a 20-minute version of the film so I could show Jim what it was going to end up being like, and I emailed it over to him and I said, "Do I have your blessing to pursue this?" And he wrote back after about a few minutes, "Okay, go ahead, your funeral." And from then on, it was just about like I had worked out, okay, how I got to save up enough money to get myself to Nashville, spend like a week there. I'll take my own camera. I just had this little Canon DSLR camera, which we shot most of the film on, and so I saved up about $7 or $8 grand, and then June 2011, I headed over to Nashville. And that was just interviews. I camped out in this conference room and in the floor below Brad Paisley's manager's office, and with a camera, and this great local cameraman, Brett Johnson, helped me out. And we just had this rotating cast of Americana legends coming through the room. Like, I think Buddy was the first one we did. So I took that footage, came back to Australia, cut it together as like a 45-minute version of the story with some archival stuff that I had. And that aired on the Country Music channel here in March 2012. And then I used the attention I got off that to do the fundraising campaign on Indiegogo, raised another $10,800, and then saved up a bunch more of my own money, hooked up with this great producer, local producer, Chris Kamen, who's here tonight actually. He flew up from Melbourne from the screen. And then April last year, he and I jumped on a plane and headed over to the States for a month, and that was the real serious shoot. That was following Jim from the trip went like Sydney, LA, Nashville, Franklin, Nashville, Asheville, Wilkesboro, Durham, Nashville, LA, Joshua Tree, San Diego, Nashville, and then we came home. So it was like we're in the car, on the plane, in the car, on the plane. Where's Jim? Jim's at and Jim's schedule was insane. Like while we were over there, he made 2 full albums, and then he went to Merlefest and played like 18 different shows at Merlefest, and then he wrote a stack of songs out in the desert in California. And it's just keeping up with this, guys. I've been saying to Jim, because he's so prolific, making a doco about him is like publishing a hard copy version of a manual for a computer program. By the time it comes out, it's out of date. So we've followed him around for about a month, and we picked up some extra interviews in and around that, and then came back here, and I just spent about 4 months hacking away, because we had about 40 hours of footage at that point, hacking that down, and I'd get like a 3.5-hour version, and I'm like, oh God, no, I can't, this has to be it, I can't take anything out of this, it's going to be like The Hobbit. And then I showed it to Chris, and he went, well, you know, probably you don't need both of these things, and we can probably, and then together I go, because Chris is not that as deeply into the minutiae of all the Americana world as I am, so he was a great second pair of eyes to go, I don't know what this means, I don't know who these people are, or this, you need this and this, even though they're both great songs. So it's just paring it down and paring it down and paring it down until we got to the fairly tight 90 minutes that you saw tonight.
So you managed to successfully get it all down to that, and then hold premieres in Nashville and LA and now Sydney on home turf for you. The Nashville premiere was in the Country Music Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what that was like for you.
I mean, that was really cool. I mean, like, I really hoped that was going to happen there, because like, where better to premiere a film about Jim Lauderdale than the Country Music Hall of Fame, because he's in the Country Music Hall of Fame. And we did that, and it's beautiful, the Ford Theatre in there, I've been joking to people that I really went to Nashville to see The Who, and we just put the premiere in the week afterwards. But that was lucky coincidence. That was a great week leading up to that, and it was a bit nerve-wracking because there were a lot of people who were in the film who came to the premiere, like Jed Keeley came to the premiere, and Buddy came to the premiere, and Randy Cause, and a few other people. So, but that was a really great experience. But one thing I noticed while doing that is that it was the first time I'd seen it with an audience. So I could feel there are a couple of sections, you know, maybe I could even lose a bit more here, or I should put music under that. So we had about 3 days between that and the Los Angeles premiere at the Grammy Museum. So I talked to Jim a bit about how I thought it went, and then I went back to, when we landed in LA, I got into my hotel room on my laptop and started slicing away and pulled out another 3 minutes from the film, and then we had the LA premiere, and I thought it was another step forward in the process.
Back to Jim then. What's it like to watch back a film about your life?
It's strange, because I don't usually, like, if I do something, if somebody videos a show or something, I usually don't watch it, because I just don't like to watch myself, kind of self-conscious. So I was really nervous about the first 2 things for some reason. I mean, I guess it's just because it's odd watching yourself, you know, and kind of, you know, because I really don't know who I am in a lot of ways. And so when you see, you know, this thing, it's like, oh, wait a minute, is this my life, and is this who I am? You know, because and then even today I was kind of, you know, going through a lot of intense stuff, thinking, I don't know, you know, I don't know if I want to see this and everything. My consciousness pretty much revolves around making records. It's like and even now, that's kind of, you know, with the way things are changing. I mean, eventually, that's gonna, you know, maybe things will only be singles. You know, maybe I mean, you guys have record stores here. We don't even have them hardly in the States, unless they're little independent record stores that sometimes also have used records. And, but you know, the chains, what's it called, JB's Music World?
JB Hi-Fi.
JB Hi-Fi. We don't have anything like that anymore. And so I feel kind of this race against time now, because that's what, when I was talking in the movie about my identity being like, well, I'm with, so-and-so record label, but now it's not, it doesn't matter what label I'm with, because that's all going away, but it's more of like, how can I put this 10 to 15 to 20 song collection together out? How can I get it out? Because I guess, if I was going to give Jeremy an alternative title for this movie a few months ago, and I was going to call it, I was going to say, let's call it I'm a Song, because sometimes that's what I feel like I am. I'm just a song. I'm a pretty much have screwed up, most things in my life, but that is like my identity. That's kind of like what I am, is a song.